Jesse Ventura.
Hello, everyone. I'm former Minnesota Governor Jesse Ventura, the 38th governor of the great state of Minnesota. And the first thing that I want to get clear is this is not a campaign talk. I am not running for any public office at this time. But I do want to make a political statement in the light of what we live under today and a brief history. First of all, I'm 69 years old now. I'm a graduate of Minneapolis Roosevelt High School, and if you recall the recent events with Mr. Floyd and his death in Minneapolis, that happened right in my neighborhood, South Minneapolis, between Roosevelt and South High School where I grew up. I'm very familiar with it. And so that's a little bit of history of me. I joined the Navy right out of high school. I'm a Vietnam veteran. I came home. The first thing I did, I was rebellious, and I walked with the Stop the Draft movement. I wanted the draft ended because the draft was a horrible thing that was totally discriminating, and the rich kids get out like Donald Trump, and the poor kids have to go. And so, and most of the poor kids were kids of color would have to go to the war. And so I marched against the draft. We were successful in eliminating it. I've also marched for the Equal Rights Amendment for women and been involved lately. And I marched multiple times to change the name of the Washington football team. So I've always been a bit of a radical in a way, rebel, whatever you want to call me. Dennis Kucinich, the great congressman from Ohio, after dinner one night, called me the greatest free spirit he had ever met. And that was one of the greatest compliments I could ever get from someone like Dennis, too, especially. But my history is I've always been third party. I mean, I voted for John Anderson way back in the Ronald Reagan era. I have voted third party politics constantly because I've seen the destruction, and I understand. John Adams, one of our forefathers of the country, warned us, I believe it was Adams, when he said when political parties take over the government, when they become so powerful, that will be the end of the United States as we know it. Well, people, don't you think we're kind of there right now? The two political parties have really taken over. And I like to refer them as really the one political party. They're the corporate party. Because when I was governor, I brought the third party people together to try to get them under one roof. And unfortunately, it was like herding cats. But I did find out what we had in common. And here's what we had in common. We didn't take the dirty money. That's what all the third parties pretty much have in common. We're not dirty with the PAC money and the dirty corporate money. The other two parties are. And always remember this. The two major parties today, they put their party before the country. You see that constantly. Protect the political party, the party's power. They aren't necessarily doing what's best for the people of America. That's number one on their priority. Number two, the donors, the money people, the people that keep them in power, the people that pave the way. They're the ones that get the tax cuts. They're the ones that get the money bailouts when our economy tanks. So naturally, they're the second ones fixed or taken care of. Then finally with them, it's their own personal view, whatever they may feel personally about an issue. And we, the people, might be fourth. But something else could sneak in there. We very well could be fifth for all that I don't know everything. But there's a division in this country today, and it's the biggest it's ever been. You know, I heard it described the other day. It's like going back to the 60s. And yes, it is in a way. And I lived through the 60s. I lived through Dr. Martin Luther King. I was a teenager back then. I was a young 13-year-old when President John F. Kennedy was assassinated. And I don't buy for 1 minute Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone, if he acted at all. But that aside, that's another story. But I lived through all that tension. I lived through the death of Robert Kennedy and his murder along with Dr. King. And I thought we were finished with it. But we're not. And that's the thing that bothers me the most today, is the fact that they're forcing me to relive history again. They're forcing me to relive times that I remember in my life today, and I'll state this. I think it's worse today, believe it or not, than it was in the 60s. I think to get to where we're at today, you have to go back another 100 years. You got to go back to the Civil War, because what's happening in our country today is a division in our country. We're being divided up, just like the Confederacy and just like the Union soldiers. And if that happens, it will be a disaster, a complete disaster. Now, why do we need to elect a third-party president? Here is why. No matter if you elect Trump or Biden, the polarization is going to continue and it's going to get worse. It's going to get worse. The only way out is to give them a common enemy, and that's what the third party does. They fear the third party more than anything else, and guess who knows that from experience? You're looking at him. I got elected governor of Minnesota. I had a Democratic-controlled Senate and a Republican-controlled House, much the same as you see nationally today. Now, for the first 3 years, whoever I sided with generally prevailed. But then we got to year 3. I submitted my budget, which I'm required to do. The Democrats and Republicans got in bed together. They discarded my budget. They came back with one of their own. I vetoed it twice. They overrode my veto twice. Subsequently, using the people of Minnesota for political pawns, their budget didn't work. I had left office, and guess what? Minnesota had a $5 billion deficit because they put their party politics and party power before the good people of Minnesota. The pecking order was them first, the Minnesota people second. And there's a great example of it. Now, nationally, that's what you need to have happen. You must give them a common enemy. Somebody, those two parties, they fear the third party movement more than anything else. And they eventually will jump in bed together and they'll be singing Kumbaya by the fireside. And you'll think, how did this happen? Well, it happened because a third entity entered the game. And that's what we need to have happen in America. A third or even a fourth entity should be entering the game now. We're too diverse. I'm fiscally conservative, but I'm socially liberal. Who do I fit in with? I believe in less government. There's a lot of places I think government could be reduced. But I also believe in social issues. I don't think it's the government's business what your sexual preference is. I don't think it's their business. End the war on drugs. It's been a disaster. And, there's all sorts of things like that that can happen if we break the cycle of the Democrats and Republicans. But that's what you have to do. You have to break the cycle. And doing that is difficult and will be difficult. It may be a 10 or 20-year process. Remember, they've been in charge this long and they're going to protect their turf. Now, I just want to tell everyone, thank you very much for hearing me today. I appreciate it very much. I keep trying to get out of politics, but it's kind of like pulling the plug in the bathtub. It keeps wanting to suck you down the drain. But anyway, I still love my country. I believe in my country, and I believe that we can be a better nation and will be a better nation when we're given more than just two choices. Always remember what the late, great Jerry Garcia of the Grateful Dead said. If you're made to pick the lesser of two evils, it means you're still picking evil. Thank you.